Can everybody hear me? If you just raise your hands again. Okay, so as I said before, I'm hosting this, but I also wanted to say a few words. I think kind of building upon what Adnan mentioned earlier, it's about sort of practical action on the ground. So I just wanted to quickly run through. I realize we don't have much time left now, sort of coming up to 5 o'clock. So I'll try and be fairly quick. Just kind of talk about a sort of work that I've been doing. So my background is that an academic. I'm a researcher, lecturer at Leeds University. And I'm also an associate member of Medina Town Movement. So some of the work that I've been doing in the past has been about urban green space. So if I could bring up my presentation, let me just try and share this with yourselves. So you should shortly be able to see this. If I can get this to work. I'm just sharing this. Okay, right, so hopefully now everyone should be able to see this. If you can just raise your hand, if you can hear me and you can see this. Thank you. Okay, so there's still lots of hands not showing, so hopefully people can see this. You can hear me. Can the panelists hear me? Okay, right. Okay, so it's about reconnecting to nature, the role of the domestic garden. So you might not think much about, or some of us might not think much about domestic gardens, but there's actually a lot to say about them in terms of allowing us to reconnect to nature. So the problem, what is the problem? The problem is that have we become deafened to the signs of Allah in nature by the clamor of modernity? And I've put had in red there because of obviously the coronavirus. So there's like a before and after. So where the stage we're at the moment then, had we become deafened to the signs of Allah in nature by the clamor of modernity. This is prior to coronavirus. Things are now changing, as was mentioned earlier, with more so better air quality, more nature surrounding us. So it's useful to look at what the Quran says about this. We have become deaf, dumb, and blind to the signs around us. Now, in terms of the garden as a sign, this is a quote by Emma Clark. She's a lady based at the Princess School of Traditional Arts and written a book, The Art of the Islamic Garden. And this is a quote from her book. It could be argued that any garden, since its main ingredient is God's creation, reminds us as it does of the beauty and unity of nature, especially in built-up environments. It says especially emphasizing built-up environments, because built-up environments, that's where we are surrounded by a lot of non-nature. So this is where a garden in the middle of all that can take us back and remind us of the beauty and unity of nature. So gardens provide many benefits, and I'm sure you're aware of many of these benefits. And also people view some gardens as being a problem as well. So in terms of the benefits, if I touch upon those, they make our towns cooler in summer, they improve the air quality, they help with stormwater mitigation. When you get the floods, the water's absorbed if you've got more permeable ground. They're a source of habitats for wildlife. They provide better health for people. People, especially who are involved in gardening activities. This picture here is an exhibition. It was an exhibition developed at the University of Leeds about 10 years ago, and it was exhibited at the Chelsea Flower Show, and it was showcasing all the multiple benefits of gardens, domestic gardens, and lots of benefits, as I said, and I've studied some of those benefits on a sort of technical level. But as I said earlier, there are problems that people see associated with gardens as well, in terms of sort of tree root damage to properties, in terms of the maintenance that's required. They grow very quickly, and it's there's problems associated with that. And because of some of these problems, then it's leading to these gardens disappearing. So before I talk about sort of disappearing gardens, this is just some of the research that I've been involved in looking at. This is, for example, a roof garden at the University of Leeds. We've been looking some years ago, looked at the runoff from this roof, rain falling on the roof and then running off, and just measuring sort of the flood attenuation benefits of this green roof. So really looking at the benefits sort of in terms of gardens being able to, or roof gardens in this case, being able to capture rainwater. Now, going back to this problem of disappearing gardens. So in the UK, there are 5 million front gardens with no plants growing in them, and slightly under 4.5 million gardens completely paved over. So now the numbers don't match, because you will have some gardens where they're not paved over, but still, you know, people are parking vehicles on them, or so that there's nothing growing in them. But in terms of paving over, that's essentially means you just block pave, make the garden, front gardens in particular, completely impervious. So any water that falls onto the garden just drains off the garden. So there's nothing there. It's more or less barren. That land becomes barren. Now there's 3 times less plant cover in front gardens than 10 years ago. It's been a big change. And in 2013, over 1 million homeowners in that year, from the research that we've seen, over 1 million homeowners paved over a portion of their gardens. Just to put some of these numbers into perspective, the number of homes in the UK approximately is about 25 million homes. So when I say 5 million front gardens in the UK have no plants growing in them, that will be 1/5 of homes in the UK with front gardens have nothing growing in them. So disappearing domestic gardens, we've been looking at this sort of aerial imagery and trying to sort of come up with what are the numbers in terms of disappearing gardens. So this is just a study. Actually, this was actually conducted, one of the first studies I was involved in. This was done back in 12 years ago. So it was looking at a comparison between land gardens in 1971 and 2004, and the picture, the black bits that are shaded within these pictures represent the gardens. Ideally that should have been green, but it's black, so that represents the garden space in 71. So there's a lot more black in 1971 than 2004. This is for an area in Leeds, so there's been a huge change in that situation. And then we looked at the impacts of that change, of what it meant in terms of flood attenuation. Right, okay, so clearly it's a problem, and it's recognized as a problem by local authorities as well. It's all been highlighted for years now. It's become a problem. Now, unfortunately, anecdotally, there's some evidence to suggest that the certain communities, sort of the Asian community, again, this is purely anecdotal, but is perhaps for various reasons, like larger sort of families, bigger family sizes, the gardens are disappearing faster in such households for, as I said, various reasons. But whatever is happening, they are declining. So what can we do about this? So going back to this has been mentioned a few times today. So we can be inspired. I was certainly inspired by some of the hadiths that I read. So the Prophet ﷺ said, if the hour, the day of resurrection is about to be established, and one of you was holding a palm shoot, let advantage be taken of this, of even 1 second before the hour is established, to plant that. And then the other one is, there is none amongst the Muslims who plants a tree or sows seeds, and then a bird or a person or an animal eats from it, but is regarded as a charitable gift from that person. So kind of 2 key hadiths, which are clearly sort of urging us to be involved in such acts of growing and planting. Now, obviously, lots of questions. Sometimes it's not easy. It's all sort of easy for me to come here and talk about this. I have a garden. I've got a garden space. I can do this. But what happens if you don't have a garden? You only have a concreted space. You can still do it. You know, this is the same sort of front garden here. You've got left and right, so you can grow things. It's called container gardening. Just get yourself lots of containers and start growing that way. You might ask, what about if you, that's another container gardening picture. What about if you live in a flat? Again, you can be innovative. There's places, as long as you can find some space, there's, you'll find opportunities to grow. What about if you have no space at all at home? So even though I do have space at home, we do have an allotment as well, and sign up for an allotment. There are waiting lists. So this is my own family actually getting involved in just recently. In fact, this is a lot of what we've been doing during this coronavirus at the moment, is spending time on the allotment, just getting everybody involved, getting the kids involved. So do that. If you've got no garden space at home, get an allotment. And obviously it's local food production, especially times like this. It'll be nice for, you know, allotment growers in particular, sort of the harvest time, planting the seeds, sowing the seeds now to look forward to that produce in the coming months. And this, again, some of the stuff that can be planted. This is from our allotment last year. This is some garlic on the left, which can be dried and can be used for a long time. There's sort of, I think there's some kind of raspberries. There's green beans, all sorts of stuff. If you don't want to grow things on the ground, increasingly people are using roof space. These are school gardens. You should encourage, you know, your schools to retain their gardens. School gardens are disappearing as well. I know I'm focusing on domestic gardens, but from an education point of view. So this picture is of a rooftop garden in Sheffield. It's an inner city area, and this was, I believe this was declared as the Europe or the UK's first inner city nature reserve. So it has a nature reserve status, and it's in the middle of an inner city in Sheffield. It's a Sharrowvale School in Sheffield. And finally, grow anywhere you can. Maybe this is going a bit over the top, but you know, there's wall space. You can use that. This is some of the, I think this is Marks and Spencer. There's another one, wall space, floor space, roof space. So lots of opportunities, I think, and essentially the message is get growing. Some useful links before I close, but there's some organizations, if you do want to get involved, there's Back to Front, based in Leeds. There's advice and tips from the Royal Horticultural Society, RHS. There's the Leeds Allotments Federation, and there's the Northern Fruit Group, just to name a few. So thank you very much for listening. If there's any questions.